If you have ever wondered what life was like for your ancestors, you need to look at historical newspapers. However, instead of searching for your ancestors' names, explore the headlines, news items, and advertisements to catch a glimpse of their world. Then use these insights to enhance a story about the specific time in your ancestor's life. Howdy! Welcome to Write Your Family History, where I help you learn how to quickly write non-boring family histories. Now, if you're ready to learn more tips and strategies to take you wherever you are on this process, let's get into today's video. Before you can write about a day in your ancestor's daily life, start with an event in their life. Doesn't matter what the occasion is. It can be birth, marriage, a graduation, maybe they eloped, the birth of a child, the death of a parent, someone leaving for military service, someone returning from military service, moving to a new town. Do you get the idea? In this case, I'll start with Catherine Anna Huber's marriage to John Douglas Collister on the 8th of August, 1937 in Madrid, New Mexico, or Madrid, but I've heard it called Madrid. My first step is to look for the newspaper from that date in that location. The location may be a challenge if you're working with a small town. Now, Madrid is a very, very small town. And if you've ever watched the movie Wild Hogs with Tim Allen and John Travolta, you might remember the old bikers riding into Madrid. They visited Maggie's Diner, which, by the way, you can actually visit today, but it's not a diner. It is a souvenir shop. Regardless, Madrid is a very small town today, and it was a very small town historically. But Madrid is part of Santa Fe County. Therefore, the Santa Fe New Mexican is most likely the paper serving that area. However, Madrid is not too far north of Albuquerque, so newspaper articles may also appear in that city. But it's likely too small of a town to have its own paper. Once you have discovered what publications serve your ancestor's city, look for specific issues. Ideally, you'll find a newspaper for the day the event in your ancestor's life happened. Otherwise, choose a newspaper issue that came out before or after the event occurred within a couple of days. Once you have opened an issue, begin looking for historical context that would help make your story more interesting. First, review the newspaper header. Beyond identifying the title of a publication, the newspaper header can give you some insights into the location. In this case, the Santa Fe New Mexican paper boasts it's the oldest Southwest newspaper, founded in 1849, published in the oldest capital in America at the end of the old Santa Fe Trail. While Madrid is 28 miles south of the capital of New Mexico, some of this insight could add some context to your story. For instance, how about a sentence something like this? Remember, we're still drafting. It's just going to get you started. But how about Catherine married John in a town just south of the oldest capital in America near the end of the old Santa Fe Trail? Talk about establishing setting, and it all came from the newspaper's header. Don't overlook that section of your paper. Explore the newspaper's headlines. What is happening on the day of or the days preceding or following your ancestor's life event? For example, are there strikes, floods, political battles, or novelty topics? In the August 9th issue of the Santa Fe New Mexican, some headlines include, "Thousands of silk workers quilt looms." I have no idea what that means. Operation separates Siamese twin babies. Budgets of city held up. Friday the 13th has no scare for newsmen. Find new cure for love bug spike. Not all headlines should make it into your story, but some are worth leveraging. So experiment with the headlines to see which might make your story more compelling while anchoring your ancestors to a time in history. Here's another pro tip. If your draft lacks photos of your relatives, you can leverage copies of the newspapers or various little articles to decorate the page to further establish setting, even if it doesn't directly tie to your ancestor. Now, once you find a headline that seems a little interesting, incorporate it into your story, such as this. On the day an operation separates Siamese twin babies, Catherine and John had something else to celebrate. This one might work. I'm not sure. Tell me what you think. While medicine patent heiress married her third husband, an Italian who speaks no English, Catherine and John said their nuptials speaking the same language. What do you think? Do you like either one of those? Let me know in the comments section below. So explore newspapers for the days leading up to an event or following it. Perhaps your ancestors married a few days before or after a major event, such as the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Imagine the tie-ins you can create from such headlines. Another thing I want you to check out is the weather. How many weddings or other events are impacted by the weather? So look for weather predictions, weather reports, rainfalls, droughts, and other major weather events that may have appeared in print on or around the time the event happened in your ancestor's life. Then write something that looks like this. The couple was anticipating little chance of rain and temperatures likely ranging from the 60s to the 80s when they tied the knot. And notice again, you're establishing setting about the daily life of your ancestors using those newspapers. To enhance the context of nuptials, explore events happening concurrently because they could have a potential impact on the wedding significance or attendance. Will the wedding capture the attention of the entire town, or will it be an exclusive affair attended by the city's elite? Or is it just an event of some unknown individuals in a small town? See what you can figure out. Moreover, it's crucial to consider what alternative events or activities attendees may miss out on due to their decision to attend this ceremony. This exploration will shed light on the level of importance and appeal associated with the wedding, providing a deeper understanding of its social and societal implications. Now that you have reviewed newspapers' headers, headlines, and weather, you'll likely have anchored your ancestors in the timeline of history. But what can you do to help world build or describe the places your ancestors lived? Once again, you turn to the newspapers, but instead of looking at articles, turn to the advertisements or advertisements, depending on where you live. They can help you see what technologies, services, and so forth are available or of interest to your family and their neighbors. Now, while you cannot confirm what your ancestors purchased or desired, you can see the latest products and services available in the area where they lived. In this case, this was a time when the Ford V8 cost about $533. You could get a refrigerator and all you needed to do was put $10 down payment. Couples could dance at taverns to entertain diners, and the Camel Company heavily advertised smoke sticks. You can find some interesting ads that give you a sense of some problems people in a specific area face. For instance, since New Mexico is so dry nostrils would certainly be an issue for some. Did your ancestor consider purchasing this solution advertised in print? So advertisements helps you gather a sense of industry and the economics of the place in which your ancestor lived. In Madrid, or as the article at the beginning pointed out, the couple was going to go to Albuquerque. So how many businesses are advertising with locations in each town? What kind of companies are advertising? What types of people are they trying to service? What products appear in the papers? Were electric household items for sale? That would tell you about the affluence and the technological developments in the area. What tools were offered for household chores? How much did things cost? Do you get the idea of how cool advertisements can be in enhancing the social history for your ancestors? Now, depending on the event you're writing about, you can incorporate such ads into your ancestors' story. Just be careful not to suggest they wanted something or purchased it if you do not have supporting sources to say they did or desired. Perhaps you will simply, once again, decorate the pages of your book with advertisements to give your readers something to look at if you're short on pictures of your relatives. Now, repeat the search process for all events in your ancestors' lives. But then take your investigation and story writing skills up a notch by expanding to an investigation of their daily life. To successfully expand your ancestors' life, you need to know more about them. You can learn about your ancestors in genealogical records such as census records, death records, probate records, city directories, and so forth. However, sometimes you'll find a detailed newspaper article like this one for Catherine and John that can open up tremendous research possibilities. Catherine was from Madrid, New Mexico, as it's stated in the article. By searching the newspaper for Madrid, I found a headline that helps me understand that Madrid is a mining town. With that clue about mining, I can dig further to understand the economic situation in Madrid to better understand the small town Catherine is from. As stated before, Santa Fe is 30 miles away, so how might that have affected what people did in Madrid? Is that where they shopped? Is that where they found entertainment? The newspapers will help you answer those questions. Now, John was from Albuquerque. The couple would move to this town following their wedding in Madrid. So we can turn once again to the newspapers. You will start asking questions such as, what events are happening to help this city grow? Is the city experiencing growing pains? What are the political and social causes in either town, Madrid or Albuquerque? And maybe how does one draw people from the other town? Next, we see that Catherine attended Loreto Academy during her childhood. I am from Texas A&M University. That's where I met my husband, but I also attended a couple other schools in Texas. And so what would you want to do when you see where somebody goes to school? Research that place in the newspapers to learn about the school. What were the mascots? What activities were they involved in? What were some of the local customs? How affluent or not affluent it was? The possibilities are really pretty spectacular. Some other things that you find out about Catherine and John was Catherine was a member of the Alpha Theta Phi sorority, and John was a member of the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. So perhaps you're going to research around the time that Catherine and John were members of this sorority and fraternity, and maybe you're going to discover an event in which they both attended, and maybe that's how they met. You can also find out how exclusive were these organizations. You may even discover that Catherine or John had leadership roles in these two fraternities. It may not be in your family records, but it could be in newspapers. Now, where were they members of the sorority? Well, they were in the University of New Mexico, so you'll also want to research the University of New Mexico, figure out what were the draws of that university at that time. Texas A&M, depending on the time, the Corps of Cadets was a huge draw. It was also a great agricultural and engineering college, still is. You can learn more about the college and you can add those details into your story about Catherine and John, but at a different university, obviously. Now, in that article, I also learned that Catherine's father was the superintendent of the Albuquerque Cerrillos Coal Company. And so we can research that to see if this was a very successful coal company and maybe gather some details about how Catherine's life was affected. Was she part of an elite circle? Did she attend social events because her father was the superintendent of this coal company? Lots of articles about that company can help you understand the impact in her life. By contrast, John's father owned the Collister business. Now, his last name was Collister, so it seems like it might have been a family business. And John, in the article, said he was joined his father full-time in the business following the wedding. So this may suggest that John is at the University of New Mexico obtaining a business degree or some type of engineering degree in order to benefit the family business. And you can see those ties. And once again, if they're owners of this business, what does the business do and what opportunities does it afford John? And is this a power couple marriage, or is it just two yokels who happen to hook up at the University of New Mexico? Get into the newspapers and you're going to find some rich, rich, rich details. Now that we know so much about the details of John and Catherine's lives, I want you to return to the newspapers and research their family members. You have Mr. and Mrs. James Callister, you have Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Huber, you have Callister relatives, you have Huber relatives. You can start finding out, are there scandals associated with the Hubers? Are they super influential in the community? Are they well beloved? All of this by digging into the details of the newspapers and specifically asking questions about what's happening in the daily life, what's happening in the things that your ancestors are connected to, and then go a next step further and find out how their family members are connected in the newspapers. Now, the next thing I want to invite you to do, particularly if you start having two locations, two countries, whenever there's a two of something, start trying to compare to family sizes, to family structures, so forth. You get the idea. To religions. I want you to start thinking about questions of comparison. How do those two towns compare? And would Catherine be super excited of leaving the small town? Would the influence of Albuquerque help Madrid by this joining of the children of business owners or superintendents, of coal companies, that type of thing? You're going to start comparing things, because when you have a small town girl marry a big town boy or vice versa, you might actually encounter some conflict, right? And you can start to speculate and wonder, was this an exciting change, or were there going to be obstacles they have to face that they're not used to? Think about the contrast in your own life, and then you can use those to write better stories. While you are in the newspaper researching Madrid or Albuquerque, be sure to check out certain aspects of the newspaper to give you a sense of what's going on in the town. Letters to the editors can help you better understand what's on the thoughts and minds of the individuals in the town that your relatives are from. So while your ancestors may not have written the letter, what if there are frequent letters to the editor that are criticizing the coal company? Frequent letters to the editors saying, hey, at the University of New Mexico, the students would like this to happen and it's not. So check out those letters to the editors. The same questions would hold through to opinion pieces. These are the sanctioned newspaper writers writing those pieces where the letters to the editors are your average citizens and what they're discussing. So get a sense of what's on the hearts and minds of the people from the town in which your ancestors live, and it can help you better understand your ancestors' daily lives. Can't necessarily ratify or confirm what you think their opinions are about the topics, but when you're putting your ancestor in setting, knowing what people are talking about could definitely help you understand what's going on. Major events and festivals help add settings, kind of like a Hallmark movie does, and how it's the small town always has these festivals going on. So when you look at that, you want to see, are these festivals annual? Do they bring lots of people into town? Is Madrid known for rodeos or circuses or celebrity visits or celebrity galas or crazy once-a-year events? I know Albuquerque is known for its balloon festival. Now, I don't know how long the balloon festival has been happening, but look at the papers. What's the balloon festival happening near the time in which this couple married? It could be kind of fun. Crime beats help give you a sense of the safety or the perceived safety of the town in which your ancestors from. And this is particularly beneficial when you are comparing someone from a small town who's now going to live in a big town. For instance, when I was growing up outside of Houston, in a little town called Alief, I would hear the news and just think, oh, I would never, ever, ever want to live in downtown. And so anytime somebody talks about living downtown, whether it be Houston or DC or Chicago or whatever, all of the crime reports seem to happen in downtowns, and I don't want to go visit after a certain hour during the day. And even then, I'm still very suburban and I don't like downtowns. And so from my own personal experience, looking at crime beats to see just how much crime happens in an area could give you a sense of, well, when Catherine moves to Albuquerque, is she going to be very nervous? Because if Madrid has very low crime, she might be a little apprehensive going to Albuquerque. However, she was a sorority member, likely part of the University of New Mexico. So maybe she's already gotten familiar with Albuquerque and it's not a big deal. Take a look at transportation schedules. Why? Even though you don't necessarily know your ancestors' use of the transportation, you can start finding out, how do people access the town? Was this a tourist location? Was it a pass-through town? Or is it like Los Alamos, where you go to Los Alamos, you don't pass through Los Alamos? It's not really a tourist destination. And those details give you a little sense of the world in which your ancestor lives. You can also try to find out, how do people leave? Can they leave by plane, train, automobile, or water vessels? So why do you want to take a peek at entertainment sections? Well, you want to see what the city offers. Do they have movies, lectures, theaters, musicals, floor shows, or big bands, dining establishments? The reason why this is important is if you've got this young couple, until they have children, what can they be doing with their time? Now, you do have the hint that they were part of the two sororities. They're attending the University of New Mexico. Well, maybe they're attending sports games. How often do these sports teams win? Are they like the Cincinnati Bengals that are a laughingstock? Or are they a dominating team like the LA Lakers were in the 90s? I think they were the dominating team in the 90s. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I hope you're starting to see how fun newspapers are and how they can help tell a better story to recreate the world in which your ancestors lived. Have a go at writing your ancestors' story using these different tips and techniques, and then come back and tell me how it all worked out. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you're ready for the next writing tip, check out this video right up there.